This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Welcome to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Werner, licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. Moments of Clarity's mission is to educate and end the stigma on mental health through the inspirational stories of our exceptional guests. You can join in the show by calling Tiffany toll-free at 866-826-1340 or on Facebook and Twitter at MOC with Tiffany. Now, here's Tiffany Werner.
Hi, thanks for listening. This is Moments of Clarity. I'm Tiffany Werner, licensed mental health counselor, and I'm your host. And today we're going to be discussing mental health and substance abuse. And my guest is calling in from the UK and from London, actually. And he's a coach, a podcast speaker, and an artist. And his journey has been such a rough one, but with a good outcome. I'll just let you, without, spoiler alert, I guess. He's been facing mental health issues since the age of 14, and he was Baker acted, we would say in the United States, as a threat to his own life through the initial diagnosis of schizophrenia and downgrade to acute bipolar, and had a pretty rough childhood with drugs, alcohol, things of that nature. And now at age 35, he started hosting his own podcast, which is available on iTunes and Spotify, called The Inner Warrior. And I want to welcome to Moments of Clarity, Henry Johnstone. Hi, Henry.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. There's that British accent I've been hearing is so charming. How are you doing? And wow, what a life you've lived. I know that you speak with young people and focus with kids. You want to tell us a little bit about your history and what brought you so passionately to reaching out and educating others on mental health?
Yeah, I'd love to. And thank you so much for inviting me onto your show as well, Tiffany. It's a huge honor to be able to share my story. So I'll give you the
It's a huge honor to have you here.
As it were. So I was born into a really loving, normal family, like really loving. There was nothing on the surface of it that would suggest that I would go the way that I did. I had really early onset mental health problems, which really started to direct where my life went, because I was a difficult child. People didn't know how to deal with me because I'd have spikes of emotion. I started to steal really early on. And we'll talk about this later on in the show. And this just carried on into my teenage years. And by the time that I picked up my first joint, that was the moment when I realized I will do whatever it takes to feel the way that this makes me feel. And that just sparked a bomb. And it took me down an incredibly dark path. And I'm talking self-destruction, self-hatred, self-shaming, a lot of very dark, intense self-harm, homelessness, being ostracized from my family, and a whole load of other hideous darkness. And the reason why I do what I do is because I've got to make some kind of meaning out of that, Otherwise, it's pain that's just gonna harbor, and it's not gonna. And I'm a big believer that the pain can be channeled into something far greater than it is. And that's what I do with my coaching. I coach young men so that they don't have to go through what I did, so they can perhaps avoid the pitfalls. And that ultimately gives me meaning. And when my life's got meaning, I'm going to go a little bit off the deep end now. I know it's really early in the show.
No, but, go on. I'm with you.
I'm a human being. I experience terror around my own mortality, regularly, existential crises. And helping people, making meaning out of my pain, that gives that existential terror, it calms it. So I literally make meaning out of my life by helping young men avoid the pitfalls that I did.
Yeah, and a lot of times our bad experiences is what really inspires us to do good with them. Good always comes out of bad. And a lot of people that are in the helping profession is because we went through something traumatic and got out of it in a helpful way, and we see others going through it, and we want to help them and show that there's hope.
Yeah, absolutely. To inspire hope is a gift. It's a real gift.
Yeah, absolutely. So what led you to you got in the beginning? You said you were sanctioned. I guess that's what they call it in England, but
Section.
it's or Baker acted or against your will or for your own safety. How old were you then, and what happened?
I was 14 and I was at boarding school. I don't know if you guys have boarding school in the US, right? It's when you live away from home in another school. I'm sure you do. So anyway, I was in this.
We usually send them over your way.
Please don't do it. Don't do it.
It's more common over there, but I think so.
It's kind of
send them away to boarding school in England.
Yeah. And now you got to picture young Henry. Now, young Henry, super sensitive, really in touch with his emotions, very, very creative, more prone to perhaps writing poetry or writing a letter to his mum, placed in this environment which was, how to best describe this. It was very sports orientated. It was very steeped in the past. It was very traditional. And when I talk about that, I mean, the teachers, they were resentful that they couldn't use, corporal punishment, the hitting and the.
They were resentful that they couldn't.
Oh yeah, like there was some.
Like,
I learned.
Dang it! I have to put down the paddle.
Yeah, no, totally. There was this one guy, and he taught me Latin, and he just used to stroke his cane. And it was the most unsettling experience you could possibly imagine.
That just sounds wrong. Sorry.
It's full of innuendo, and I'm sure it was
only
quite
to some people like us. Go on.
So this kind of environment, and we were put through military training in there as well. It was emotions were not encouraged, but they were shamed. By the teachers. So I was in this environment. I couldn't express my emotions. So I literally couldn't communicate in the way that I'd been used to. So I just shut down, and I tried to, engage in sport. I tried to engage in the military training. I tried to be something that I wasn't, and it just caused like a rupture inside me. Whatever was waiting to come out was definitely accelerated by having to go through that experience of being like ritualistically shamed. And that's not like
so not okay.
It's not for a little kid.
Right.
And that also happened before boarding school. Teachers, I don't know what it is. Maybe I've just got a face like that, but they would ritualistically shame me. And that deep upset, I just harbored it, and it just turned into something monstrous inside me.
Yeah. Oh, they were, and they've done away with that over here too. But there was some Catholic schools that were able to use a paddle or threaten with a ruler on the hand or whatever. And
yeah. The Catholic schools get a very bad rap, and I don't want to offend any Catholic headmasters by saying that they're all like that, but definitely, back in the day, that was a precedent.
Yeah, I was sent to Catholic school growing up, but I think it was post letting them. I've never been corporal punished in school, but thank goodness. But it doesn't mean it didn't happen to some kids behind the scenes, probably. But
oh yeah, like absolutely, it's amazing when you get into those kind of environments. Like as a kid, I kind of took the adults as knowing, what to do. They were the voice of reason, but really, when you get into institutions like that, you often find that adults just have no idea, and they're acting very much like the children that they were in a playground of their own making. So kids are subject to the whims of an unadvanced adult, which is a very, very damaging place for them to be.
Mm-hmm. I want to welcome callers to call in if you have any stories or any support. 866-826-1340. We're live for the hour. 866-826-1340. Call in, give some stories to share or some feedback, or if you have any questions or need help. 866-826-1340. Okay, so it started off like that, and then so how did that lead into your the mental health?
Oh yeah, sorry. Oh yeah, that's exactly what you asked me, wasn't it? Sorry. Okay, so that was all happening, and I started to steal lots of things. That's just what I did. I started to steal. I started to break into teachers' houses and steal booze. Why? I don't actually know. I just knew that when I tasted, it was the same as the joint, right? As soon as I tasted that beer or that wine, I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, because this actually makes me feel okay. And right now I don't feel okay.
Right. Henry?
But,
There. We lost you for a second.
oh, right. No. Okay, I'm back. So I started bringing weapons into school.
You started bringing weapons into school.
Yeah, like my dad had a collection of deactivated weapons, and I just thought, I'm going to bring this in to make a statement of who I am. So I essentially wanted to terrify people away from me. And I just ended up, and then something happened. Like, I have depersonalization disorder. So that's a moment where I feel completely detached from my body. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I am. And when it happened to me, I was 11. I was walking up to a school assembly, which is what they have in the morning. And I just broke down the floor and I started to scream, and you can only imagine how well that went down. And there was no support around.
Or how scary that must have been for you. That's part of the stigma I want to remove from mental health, is to educate on what it's like for people that have to live with these symptoms. And that it doesn't make anyone crazy or anything. If anything, we should feel more compassionate, more understanding, and be more educated to help someone going through something like that. Especially if you're age 11 and you don't even know what you're doing, and then you come to, or if you realize, and looking back, how terrifying that must be for somebody.
Yeah, and it is. It's just absolutely baseline terror, abject terror. But I didn't receive anyone saying, "Hey, are you okay?
Right?
You need a hug."
They're like, "What's wrong with you?"
It was like, "What is wrong with you? You are so weird. Who are you? I don't want to spend time with you." But that was just my peers, not to mention the teachers who just distanced themselves completely from me, and then brought this kind of ritualistic shaming to me every day. And then I got excluded from school. They asked me to leave. There was no aftercare. And then I remember speaking to the nurse, because I thought I had a good relationship with the nurse, and I got sort of sectioned, as in I was a danger to myself. They saw something very bad was going on. I was hearing voices in my head. I was just crumbling, and they took me to a mental health ward. They took me out of the school system. They put me into an inpatient mental health ward with other struggling teenagers. And I stayed there for a couple of months. And I phoned this nurse, just to have this kind of connection, because I was young, I was a sweet kid. And she was like, "So you got what you wanted. You always get what you want. You're a disgrace." I heard that, and I just didn't understand.
Gosh, that lady needs to. Never mind.
Yeah.
That's just so wrong.
It is for a caregiver.
Oh, my
and that's
goodness.
the kind of message that needs to be sent to schools. Is you're dealing with kids.
I know, right? Confused little kids. And and most of our problems in adulthood stem from childhood, early childhood. So it's so important of who we have around our kids when they're young.
Yeah, and it is it is an honor, I believe, to be in a position of care for someone's child and for them to trust you as such.
Absolutely. I agree.
And the abuse of that is just not okay, and those people need to be removed from the system. But, I look back and I look at her and I feel compassion, because I'm like, you know what? You've got your own beliefs and experiences. It certainly doesn't excuse what you did. But I certainly went through stages of feeling really angry towards her, very defensive towards her. But now I'm like, your mental state at that time and your belief systems, they obviously weren't up to par. But
she might have been projecting her own self-shame on you.
Oh, yeah.
She probably had her own issues. I'm just assuming. Hang on one second, Henry. It's time for our first break, but I want to get back to the rest of the story because so much more is coming up, and I'd like you guys to stay tuned. We'll be back with Moments of Clarity in just a moment.